is it called? The Mental Ginger Show?
I think so, the Mental Ginger Show.
Quality.
Alright, troops. Hello and welcome to That Mental Ginger Show with me, Andy the Mental Ginger, because if there is one thing worse than being a ginger, it is a ginger with mental health issues. Now, my faithful 3 followers, we have a very, very special guest tonight, and I'm not just saying that because I'm trying to get the plugs, but we have the unbelievably talented JJ Gilmour from the band The Silencers, if anybody remembers them from the 80s to 90s. Also the stint East 17, and a couple more surprises that he'll enlighten you on later on. JJ, thank you so much for doing this. It is an absolute pleasure to have you here in my dad's kitchen.
Yeah, well, it's nice to be back in Coatbridge, and even just to drive through is lovely.
Yeah, well, lovely to drive through, maybe the weather not too much.
No, not today. Actually, I did a wee bit of aquaplaning today. I've never really...
Enlighten, what is aquaplaning?
It's kind of when the car just loses control in the water.
Right.
So it's surface water.
So what we would call a skid.
Yeah, but a wee bit more dangerous than a skid.
Oh.
Because, you know, you can bring back a skid when you aquaplane. You're at the mercy of the water.
Yeah.
You know, so yeah, it can be a bit tricky. And it's not one of my favourite pastimes is driving. So yeah, it was a wee bit. I didn't pick the right day to venture.
You made it here in one piece, and that's the main thing. So tell me a bit about your beginnings and your life growing up, because many of your fans would know that you grew up in sunny Coatbridge, but I also found out from my dad that you were a bit of a football player back in the day, and I heard you were pretty good actually.
I mean, I'm not sure it was, I could dribble, and that excited people, but that was really all I could do, that's dribble with the ball and not dribble from the mouth.
I think that was all I could do when I played football, in fairness.
Yeah, so I mean, the problem, probably unlike maybe your dad and a lot of other football players, I never really fitted into the team sport. To me, it was all about individuality for me, and so I never really got the team sport, and I never really got that when you dribbled with the ball at some point you'd have to pass it. I thought the other 10 guys were decoys, and that ultimately doesn't work in a team sport. So I think that you either have to conform and be with the team and go as a team player, or quit, and so I quit it because I never really, I wasn't that good anyway, and wouldn't have probably went any further than a boys guild football team, or but when you kind of inherit that sort of jinky handle, if you were on the green side you were jinky, if you were on the blue side you were Willie Henderson, or one of these, that's certainly of our generation.
So that was how you wound up with the nickname Jinky, because you're a great dribbler of the ball. I mean,
again, I would use great, cautiously. I mean, I could certainly dribble, but I think I'm probably maybe a bit of a one-trick pony. Once you get caught, you'll do that dribble once, and anybody with any kind of football sense will see it and think, I've seen that. I bought apples at that bar before. I'm going to. He's sus. That's the only thing that he can do, and he doesn't disguise it very well.
Would you say that's kind of how you gravitated to the arts side? You're saying that you were an individual in a team sport, and as we know from performances, sometimes that can be a very individual thing when you're doing your creating, like your writing, your singing.
Yeah.
So would you say that was kind of maybe what drove you to the arts?
Yeah, I mean, I think that my passion for music was always stronger than my passion for sports or anything else, really, film or theatre. I just loved the idea of music and how it's created, and what it took to do it, and for me it sort of manifested itself in singing. And I think so I kind of had my first TV performance when I was 6, on a kids TV show.
Do you remember what kids TV show it was?
Yeah, it's called Junior Showtime.
Oh, fantastic.
And probably your dad and your Uncle Jim and people would have got early out of school that day, because I remember that one achievement at St Bartholomew's Primary School in Townhead, of the kids all getting away early because I was going to be on TV, and everyone could watch it. You know, it was a national TV show. So even though that wasn't my idea, I was only 6. I was a bit older than that, 7 I think. Even though initially that wasn't my idea to be on that TV show, it was more a parental sort of, you're a great wee singer, this is what your step should be next. So I think it was one of my mum's cousins, and she put me up for it, and it was an interesting time. It was a you know, my mum and I, when she was alive, disputed what happened. I was a professional bedwetter, you know, so a concern was about me wetting the beds more than how I was going to perform on TV, you know. So we had to go down to Leeds to Time T's Yorkshire Television, and my mum would just be more concerned about packing plastic sheets, or you know, for the bed, to make sure that you know, that I didn't to ruin the bed. That was a big memory of it. But also there was you'll be the wrong generation, although you would know the name Bonnie Langford.
Yes. With the big smiles.
Yeah, she was one of the co-hosts, one of the co-children hosts. It was hosted by a guy called Bobby Bennett, and it was the kind of, I don't know if there's any kids shows around like that today. I suppose it would be like a young version of X Factor, although it wasn't a competition as such. It was just you had to, if you were on the show, you merited being on the show.
So it was kind of like a showreel.
It was before
showreels became a thing.
Yeah, it was. In those days, they weren't really those kind of light entertainment for kids and stuff. Weren't. It's a bit like being on a very, very poor version of like Sesame Street. You know.
Well, in fairness, I think there'd be a few Muppets back then.
Oh, aye, that me being one of them.
Oh, not at all.
But it was a bit like that. It was a bit. I mean, the genre. I mean, if you to label it as such, it would be cabaret. You know, it was like a TV cabaret show, and I really don't know. I can't think of a show in it. Again, it was like a poor man's Disney show. You know, and that's where kids. That's where you elevated to. That you know, that was the pièce de résistance. If you made it to junior showtime as a kid entertainer, and so I got on. You had to go for an audition. And they would do a bit like X Factor and a bit like some of the reality shows. They would do auditions in regions. So Glasgow, you would go to Glasgow. And my mum's cousin, I think it was, dragged me along. Probably not reluctantly, because even at that age I didn't mind being a show monkey, you know. But I kind of, it would certainly be more it'd be more a parental or more an adult thing, that they would shuffle you along because they thought that you had this thing, and then you would prove to everyone that you did have it, and that once you got the taste for that was the beginnings, and I got the taste, and I never lost that taste.
Yeah. Well, you made the move to Dundee to pursue a career in music in 1987, joining the band Joe Public. What type of genre were Joe Public actually?
A really good band. I mean, the band, like a lot of my career, the band were formed before I arrived. I always seemed to step into things, so I kind of moved on from being a kid entertainer and doing like social clubs and miners' welfare clubs, and those were the sort of the trail of a young entertainer in those days.
When you think about doing that now, if it was like the social clubs, if you tried to put a kid in there, they'd have you kicked out within about 3 seconds.
Oh, without a doubt. I mean, I was paraded in front of old women that would cry the whole night when you would sing songs.
I remember those days back when people thought I had talent.
Well, that's the thing, you know, that's what it was. You were there as a child entertainer. That's what you were, you know. I mean, whether you were a magician or whether you were, you know, so. I get sort of, you know, my parents were really good. They were like, you know, do you want to do this? Is this something you wanted to do? And it was, you know, so I did it, and I really enjoyed it, and but that sort of rolled on, and then I came. Actually, in between that time and in between Joe Public, I had already gone to Canada as a teenager, and I'd set up my first sort of. I'd been in bands in and around Coatbridge, performing weddings and doing things when I was like 15. The other band members were like 19 and 20 and much older, so we would play bars and Orange Halls and all these kind of places, and I had a very I was small for a start, and I did have this youthful face. So
I think that also tied into the Jinky nickname, because you were small and could dribble.
Yeah, maybe, Andrew, maybe, and I think that so that kind of, I'd done all that, so I had a wee apprenticeship that had formed because I had did that up and down the country in Scotland with a local band and playing all different genres of music, some specified for weddings, some for social clubs, some for Orange Halls. You had to do Gay Gordons and all these, because a couple of the guys were involved in the Orange Order. It was all I mean, for a 15-year-old it was pretty mental. And then I'd gone off to Canada, got my first interest in Canada with a guy called Bruce Allen, who looked after Bryan Adams and now Michael Bublé, and they were really the first people to really believe that, the first people in the industry that could do something, people that could affect what happened in the industry, that had said to me, "You've got a great talent, you've got something." So I worked with a guy called Tom Lavin, who was in quite a famous Canadian blues band, and he was the sort of understudy to Bruce Allen, this guy who still does manage Bryan Adams and now Michael Bublé. And they so I was in that camp quite young.
Yeah.
I was only 19 then. But I'd kind of sort of really disillusioned and the sort of disillusioned youth, really, the angry young man still had to deal with my angst and overcome your puberty and what are you going to do in life? You get to 19, 20, are you going to do a job? Are you going to pursue this la la land? Because everybody that's involved with you, your parents are kind of, they're not trying to hold you back from it, and they're not trying to put you off it, to simplify it. But they're also want to be parents. They want to say to you, if you could go and get a job somewhere that you'll have a routine salary, something,
Yeah, my parents were the same as well, because they thought I had talent in X, Y, and Z, but then they would say, "Oh, you need to have a career to fall back on." But when you're in that angst of youth, as you know, you're very singular focused, everything's black and white, yes or no, and you go, "Well, this is where I'm going to go," and it's not until you get your first real knock you go, "Oh, really, I do need to have something to fall back on." So if you did have to have something to fall back on, if it didn't turn out the way it had, where do you think you would have ended up?
Nothing. I was going to do nothing else but music. It didn't matter what happened if and all amount of opportunities arose within many different industries, within many different friends, within many different countries and places that I'd lived in. I was going to do nothing else. That was it. And I was so single-minded and stubborn about that it affected everything in my life: relationships, marriage, belief in, where people just, you could see them stop believing in you. You could see them saying, "Man, you need to get it together. You need to do something else. There's something else that you need to do. You can't keep doing that. You can't keep hitting the bar and hitting the post and putting the ball by the, out. You have to have something more constructive. There has to be something else for you." But then eventually I wore them all down. I wore everybody down. I just said, there's nothing else that I'm going to do. It doesn't matter what this furnishes me with. This is all I'm going to do. So don't try and you know, I lived in New York. My wife and I lived in New York, and her father was a successful businessman in New York, and he was a kind man, is a kind man, generous man, and he had said, you know, when we first moved there, what are you going to do? And I said, nothing at all. I'm going to do what I always do. You know, I'm going to pursue my music. And he said, but you don't really know anybody over here, you know. I'd left the band at that point. So that had gone through my whole life. There was no plan B. That was it. It was that or nothing.
But that's good though, because a lot of people, probably myself included for this, if they're not single-minded and they don't have that, this is what I'm going to do and nothing's going to stop me.
Yeah.
That's how you fall to the wayside, and that's how you've built the successful career that you've had. Because when you left from, if I can get the words out, I'll edit that bit in a minute. So
You don't need to edit it, keep it like this, it's better unedited.
After you left Joe Public, you went to the Silencers in 1989, who were starting to build a bit of momentum and touring with the Pretenders. How did that opportunity come about? Well, was it just I know a guy who knows a guy, or was there an audition?
No, they had came through to Vancouver when I was living in Canada, who had mentioned that I knew some of your relatives out there.
Yeah.
So they came through. I had moved from the East Coast, from Toronto out to Vancouver, and was playing music in bars, and people, you know, took a wee bit of interest. That's how I met the guys from Tom Lavin and subsequently Bruce Allen, who I must say I didn't really ever get to know Bruce Allen, Bryan Adams' manager, or spend any time with him. I knew I was in that camp, and I knew that I had elevated to that camp. But that all changed overnight. The Silencers were on tour, part of the tour in America with the Pretenders, and another part with Squeeze.
Oh, right.
Jules Holland's old band, for anybody that doesn't know Squeeze.
Yeah. That would be the uneducated, because believe me, you're going to get a music education here. Already I'm getting a musical education.
So they had came through, but they were doing some dates on their own in Canada, because they had a bit of success from their first album, A Letter from St. Paul. And so they were coming through, they were just about to launch their second album, and I had spotted it in a newspaper that they were playing there that night, so I went along to see them. But Jimmy O'Neill, who was a Chapel Hall boy that had resided here in Coatbridge, and he had known about me from an old girlfriend of mine here in Coatbridge, and she had played him some of the demos that I was doing in Canada. She'd been out visiting and had brought some of the demos back, and they were good polished demos. They were, I mean, I was working with some serious people, Bryan Adams' people, some of the guys from Bachman Turner Overdrive. We were in with some real cats. I mean,
yeah.
At 19 and 20, man, I was in with some cats.
Just hearing those names that you've brought up already, that's some of the names that, well, I'd be lucky if I was even in a whisker's hair of going near them. It would be unreal. And just,
it is.
You're just throwing out the names like Bryan Adams. It's like, I remember my mum and dad talking about his gig at Celtic Park being one of the best they'd ever seen.
Yeah.
You were like, whoa, you just throw it out. I think that's Bryan. It might as well be. That's the way you throw it.
But that's it's like, you know, it's like if you worked for the Sun newspaper, it'd be like throwing Rupert Murdoch's name about, although I wouldn't throw his name about that much.
I think he's more thrown under the bus than thrown about, but otherwise.
But so that's the industry you're in. So you know, people. I mean, I make jokes when I do my own little vlogs and podcasts about get me that brush till I sweep up all those names. But that's the nature of the industry that you're in. So it's not about how many names can you drop in it, and that was the day I met the Pope, and that was the day I did this. No, that's just your story. That's how it went along. But as I say, that dramatically changed when the Silencers came through to Vancouver, and I saw 4 guys on stage, and that changed my attitude, because I then thought that the band that I was in at the time was a band called the Watchmen.
What type of genre did they play?
We were kind of trying to be, we were trying to be the Waterboys, marrying U2, and bringing in some REM, and we were good, and we had some nice melancholic tunes, because that's my thing. It's got to pull at your heartstring, or I don't, you know, or it doesn't work for me. But when I saw these guys, I thought, oh wait a minute, that's a different shift. That's a
Yeah.
I need to go back to the drawing board. I need to go back to the whiteboard and start concocting some other things, because this isn't good enough. So I saw them on the Silencers came through. At that point I would be 23, 24. Been mixing with these boys in and out of studios, still playing all the bars in Vancouver, and then saw this band supporting some big Canadian bands, but not really getting anywhere outside British Columbia. And that, to me, that would have been a failure for me. Was to be a success in Canada alone wasn't going to work for me. There was a guy from Coatbridge, I can't remember his name now. He was in a band called Glass Tiger, and they were a big success in Canada, and everybody in Coatbridge talked about this. Not everybody, that's unfair, but a lot of people in Coatbridge talked about, oh, this guy and what he's done in Canada and all. But that for me would have been a failure. To be successful just in Canada, I wanted the world, I wanted the universe. And I saw these guys coming through, and they were having the world. They were square going the world, and I thought, I want a bit of that. They were leaving me to go to Seattle to meet up with the Pretenders, and then they were going down to play LA with the Pretenders, and then their next gig was with they were telling me that they were doing Wembley Stadium with U2, and I was like, I'm getting that. And so I said to Jimmy that night, I'm going to keep in touch with you, way before emails, way before mobiles. I'm going to keep in touch with you, man. I need to figure out what you do that I at the moment I'm not doing, or can I even do that? And he said, I listened to your demos, and your girlfriend passed on your demos. This girl called Janice Little from here in Coatbridge, and he said, you've got a great voice, there's really something about what you do, but I didn't really like your songs, and that was enough for me. So sadly for the guys in the band, I think I saw the Silencers on the Friday, had a meeting in the office with Tom Lavin on the Monday, and flew out from Seattle on the Tuesday.
That's absolutely brilliant.
You know, and I was
just the turnaround from that story is unreal. And obviously we're talking about the stories. What would you say is probably one of your best stories from being with the Silencers? So have you got any kind of behind the scenes ones, or even about your performance at Stirling Castle and doing Hug My Name 1994?
I mean, I think the biggest thing for me, the moment of being a busker in Dundee, because I came back, left that, flew out of Seattle, flew back home, moved back in with my mum in Coatbridge, sort of tried to figure out what I was going to do, moved to Dundee, realised it wasn't happening there, or with Joe Public. I thought I need something more. I'd already saw the Silencers, and then unbelievably, the Silencers phone me. Jimmy rings me from London. They're in Red Bus Studios in London, and says we're going in to record some of the songs for the new album. Could you come in and help us? I'm like, I mean, this is a band that are absolutely heading. You know, it wasn't stratospheric, but they were heading for, and were destined, and not only the British media, but the Canadian media, the American media. I mean, these guys were they were holding down a serious reputation. And I thought, they want me to help them? This is unbelievable. So my mum actually rang me. She rang me in Dundee and said that Jimmy and Neil had been looking for me. So I was almost transported. I was busking in Dundee because the golf was on in St Andrews. Dundee was full of tourists, and a phone call came in, and that completely changed my musical life, because that took me from being a busker and someone that had touched a wee bit and had mingled with some of the real international stars in Canada, because Bryan Adams was well on his way by then, and Bachman Turner Overdrive were a massive name by then, but that was my chance now. It was my chance to go down to this studio and prove myself. And then shortly after that, we recorded the album between London and Scotland, and then we went back to launch the album in Paris, because it did so well in France, and that was the start of stories that got almost surreal, almost
Kind of stories that if you were on LSD would be the only thing you'd be remembering it or believing it.
Aye, it did become. It became Forrest Gump.
Right.
You know, it became ridiculous. Like, and those early memories, I'll never forget them. We played in La Locomotive in Paris. The album had gone gold. There was journalists from all over Europe were there. I remember Jimmy and I doing 28 interviews in the one day. And then we got on stage that night, and I turned round on stage that night, and as a surprise guest, the record company had invited Dave Stewart from the Eurythmics.
Wow.
And he's standing next to me, asking the chords, and I'm thinking, I just watched you on Top of the Pops about 6 months ago, you know, doing Here Comes the Rain Again. And now you're standing on stage, what's happening here, man? You know,
Yeah.
what's going on here? And it really was overwhelming. But I managed just to hold my feet on the ground.
Yeah.
Because I felt like I was levitating, and I was. It was absolutely. It was a tidal wave. It was a tsunami that rolled over you. You know, and you had to sink or swim. You know,
Yeah.
and
Oh, it sounds very much like you've been swimming a lot, and well, as many performers know, what living not just on the road but going to other countries to tour, it can be rough. How did you manage that? Not just with the physical strain and toll, but the mental strain.
yeah. I mean, I think that there are times where you have to. I was young. I was in my mid-20s, and I was physically fit. You know, so that was all right. From that aspect, you know, I had been taught how to sing. I had a proper singing teacher when I was young, so I knew how to balance my voice. I knew how to use that and not to strain it, and you know, I had all the skills to make sure that I wasn't going to be a Paul Young. My voice wasn't going to go after, you know, 5 years. I always knew it was there to stay for as long as I could sing, or as long as the people would come and watch me. But the other side of it, the recognition, you know, as I always say, fan being short for fanatic, that, you know, supersized admiration that you got from people never really rested that well with me, and I battled with that, and I still battle with it my whole career. I don't mind being recognised, and I don't mind people saying that they like what I do, and I like all that, but it gets too much sometimes when your tour manager is telling you, is feeding your ego all the time. The record company are feeding your ego all the time. You're on TV shows, they're feeding your ego, that, you know, listen to these guys, how good are those guys? And the audience are going off their head. All of a sudden it starts swirling around your head, you know, it starts to become, you know, a tornado, you know, and you get swept up in it, and your ego starts to take over. And that's when you really need to, that's when it started getting difficult for me, you know, it started playing on my mental health, you know, really affecting me.
7 years after, you know, you decide to leave the Silencers, to go out on your own, but
yeah.
Was there any other reasons behind what your venture to go solo? Was there maybe like some mental health issues that maybe weren't recognised at that time, or was it just a combination of things?
I wanted to leave the band because Jimmy and I weren't getting on, and Jimmy was the mainstay of the band. You know, it was Jimmy's band. I mean, the band, as I said, were already successful when I joined them. So it was Jimmy's band, and I never fought for recognition. It just came. I mean, I joined the band to help them out, as I said. They rang me to help them out in London. And then Jimmy, in fairness to him, had said, do you want to do some vocals, like, you know, main vocals? And all along, for me, I was brought into the band to help Jimmy in vocals, to be a backing singer, to help that. I don't know why I was brought in, but I was there anyway. But
just
then
quite ironic that one of my favourite tracks is I Can Feel It, and that's where you've got the main vocals. It was just the emotion that comes out of it. Like you say, you like to sing songs that pull on the heartstrings, and that was kind of the early sign that that's what you were going to do, because it just hits you like a lightning bolt with how good that track is.
Well, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah.
And I think,
you know, I'm not wanting to blow smoke up anybody's arse
No.
on that, but it was absolutely fantastic.
Thank you.
Very well done.
And that makes it all worthwhile, and then that's what you heard, and that was good enough. You know, for the longest time to be, you know, when I eventually start you know, on Seconds of Pleasure, you know, the record company have now got me singing 9 songs on the album and Jimmy singing 3, and I'm like, oh wait a minute, this is a seismic change. You know, I wasn't expecting that. And
would you say it might have been maybe a bit of an ego check for Jimmy?
Well, that's the thing, because you know, Jimmy wasn't the only one in the band that had an ego. We all had egos, you know. So, you know, we would always joke, the ego has landed. You know, that was a wee in joke. You know, I'm sure plenty of people have used that term. But so we would always try and catch ourselves on and try and reel one another in. But I mean, I left the band because Jimmy and I were I was having a bad time in my own life. My best friend had died, which was the first album was named after Sunnyside Pal. His name was Paul Anthony Lennon, and he had died. I was splitting up from my marriage. It wasn't a good time in my life, and Jimmy and I were real loggerheads. And also, I felt that with all of that coupled with, I felt it was time for me to go. It was time for me to do my own thing, and I knew that I could never. I didn't want to infringe on what Jimmy was doing anyway, but I always knew that was Jimmy's baby, and he was going to protect his baby, and I completely understood that. But that wasn't. I wanted more than that. I didn't want to be King Kong. I just wanted to. I'd done that. It was an incredible apprenticeship. It's like the wee guy who worked for the glazing company for 5 years, and then one day he's fitting a window and he goes, I think I could do this myself. I think I could fit my own windows.
Yeah, well, it was certainly a massive jump, because no one really realised that. I mean, when I did my bit of a deep dive, I was like, oh my god, he was only 17. How did that come about?
Well, I mean, those are the I suppose when you make a wee, you know, when you notch something in that industry and there's a wee bit of recognition out there. It wasn't particularly that well known in Britain, but we had that European thing going on, and my old tour manager had gone to work with E17, and then of course they sacked Brian Harvey for his ecstasy statement.
Yeah.
So there was a lull there. There was a position to fill, and the guys were going out on tour in Russia, and with the best will in the world. Tony Mortimer's a nice boy, and I like Tony, but it was never. The wee Brian was the voice behind E17. So they needed a singer. They needed someone that could sing the classic songs, you know. Yeah. And although they were younger than me, not by much, I might add, that wasn't my genre of music.
I was going to say, because it was that always seemed, when I looked at it, the Silencers were more the kind of rock folk kind of style, like some of the bands you mentioned before had the more kind of U2, Bryan Adams influence, and then to jump to E17. But then again, was that just following the kind of 90s curve that was going on at that point?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest with you, Andrew, I was unemployed, you know, and my marriage had then split up. I came back from America. I was writing my first solo songs, and I was working in a studio in London, doing some tracks for some guys, and Phil rang me and he said, you know, is there any way you could make it down to London? I said, I'm in London. And he went, all right, I don't know if you'd read in the news that E17 have sacked Brian Harvey, and it's all over the news, and he's come up with this terrible ecstasy statement, you know, and it was careless of Brian. But the guys are desperate. They're going out. I don't know if desperate's the right word. That'd be unfair, actually. The guys need a singer. They're going out to Russia, to tour Russia, and they need a frontman, and they don't want to cancel the tour. It doesn't seem to be that there'll be any reconciliation of the band members at the moment. That doesn't look as if it's happening. Tom Watkins, who managed East 17, Bros, Pet Shop Boys, that genre of bands, he heard
some genre of bands, I have to say.
Yeah, so he's heard your voice and he thinks your voice is amazing and he thinks it'd be great to stand in. Could you come and meet him? And I said, well, you know, I mean, without even thinking about it, without thinking, you know, it's a bit like getting, you know, it's a bit like getting dropped with Celtic and Aberdeen come in for you.
Yeah.
You'd rather play with Celtic because that's the team that you love, and you don't think Aberdeen are as good as Celtic, but you'll go anyway because that's your job. And but once I had listened more to Tony Mortimer's writing, or Ant as he likes to be known, once I'd listened to Ant's writing, I just loved it. I loved what he did. I loved it. I thought Stay Another Day was a classic song.
Yeah. Everybody, because I grew up in the 90s, and they all had that puffer jacket. And there's one of this story that I can actually tell, and it's pretty humiliating, but it's a good humiliating. And when I was in primary school, when I started discovering that I could sing, but I was really nervous about singing to people. Mom and Dad knew that I could sing, but I would get really nervous. And one of my best friends was like, "You should really start like singing at school." And I'm like, "I don't know how to do that," because I was only like 7, 8 years old. And he went, "I've got an idea. Stay here." And he went toddling off, and he came back and went, "Some of the girls don't believe that you can sing."
Right.
And I was like, "Okay. So what are you planning on doing?" He's like, "They want to come over and hear you sing." Okay, yeah, they can come over if that's all right. He's like, "Well, have you got any songs you can sing?" And I was like, yeah, I've got a song I can sing." So they came over and I sung Stay Another Day. And they were just like, "You were really good." And me, I'm like,
what school was this?
Tilbury Primary in Airdrie.
Oh, I
got Gartley boy.
Oh, wow.
At that point, and then moved to just outside of Wynn Hall, just where the Airdrie Academy is. We were just a street down from there, and I'd got told that I could move to Chapelside when I moved there, but I'd made literally one friend, and my mum and dad were just ecstatic that I'd actually made a friend. So they were like, "Okay, right, he can stay there." And yeah, that's my little story. If you're ever in contact with Ant, you can let him know.
Well, when we used to sing,
also scored me my first girlfriend.
Well, good. When we were kids, when we were teenagers, we used to sing to the tune of Another Brick in the Wall.
Oh,
we used to sing, "All in all, you're just another prick from Wynn Hall." So I don't know who had fights with Wynn Hall people at that time, but I thought it was
Thrash Bush, Burnfoot. Well, basically everybody wanted to fight Wynn Hall.
I just thought it was rhyming genius.
Yeah, you know, the one that was from my generation, because we stayed in the what we call the no man's land between Burnfoot and Wynn Hall.
Right.
So we'd hear people going like, "Thrash Bush in the house." So we would shout, "Wynn Hall's up your maw."
Oh dear God.
But so yeah, I think yours was a lot better than ours, or slightly more tasteful, slightly. Yeah. So in 2002, you went solo.
Yeah.
That is, just to make sure 2002 is definitely accurate.
Pretty much.
Because sometimes Wikipedia can be a bit dodgy with that one.
Yeah.
But more importantly, you've had a long-standing success as a solo artist. I mean, Sunnyside Pal, for example. Once again, a nice, good reference for
Coatbridge. Yeah.
And Slow Commotion. So, what would you say has been kind of your key to staying relevant within modern music?
I mean, I don't think. I'll be first and foremost. I need to be honest. It's been a slog since I left the band. You know, I've done a lot of different things. You know, to keep doing what I've done. But it is first and foremost, you've got a fan base that you've got with the Silencers. But make no mistake about this. When you leave, it's like, again, I can reference this to maybe some other position in life. You know, so if you're a member of Rangers Football Club and you leave them, most of the fans don't like you for leaving the club. You know, you've gone to, I suppose it's a bit like, I read something online the other day about like Kieran Tierney leaving Celtic.
Yeah.
he's gone to Arsenal, and some people are still angry about it. They're still, upset about it. But
the infamous one could be Brendan Rodgers of the present day.
there you go, exactly. Turned into.
So it's that kind of example. If you're going for that bigger fish or that, trying to broaden your horizons and be like a solid, stable artist in your own right, a lot of fans can maybe take umbrage with that. And I'm pretty sure you've had the. Are you ever going to get back together?
All the time.
Are you going to do one more tour? So I'm going to be that guy. Have you ever thought about it?
No, well, I've been asked to do it, and I have no need to do it. I see it as an amazing time in my life, I really do, but I've no need to go back and visit it. I have no desire to go back and visit it. Joe and I are obviously doing the Caesar thing. Joe was in the Silencers, the original bass player in the Silencers.
Yeah.
The Silencers had more members than the Cure at one point.
As long as I didn't have any more members than the Guns N' Roses orchestra, I think you were all right.
Well, there you go.
And a guy not coming around with a KFC bucket on his head.
Aye, and I think that so when you leave your band, I suppose to answer your question, when you leave your band, you don't leave it in the goodwill of everyone. Although there are people that have stood with me and there are people now. I mean that remember JJ Gilmour or Jj Gilmore as a solo artist, and that's how they'll remember me, or the guy that used to be in the Silencers, or the former member of the Silencers, however it's worded. And that was as I say, I didn't leave it to condescend it or to think, oh, that was my apprenticeship, I'm going to be much bigger than that. I just left it because I had desire to do my own thing, coupled with the fact that Jimmy and I weren't seen eye to eye in decision making within the band. And that's all right, because you're like a family. But to try and sustain your career from leaving a unit like that, that's in your head. You think that everybody's coming with you, and you also think that the record company are just going to sign you automatically. Like I phoned my old record company boss, and he said, "Yeah, so what can I do for you? What is it?" And I said, "All right." I suddenly realised. I thought, "Oh wow, wait a minute, and then I phoned another pal in New York when I was living out there who was big admiration for the band, and he went, "Yeah, what is it? What can I do for you?" It's like, and at that point, all I was saying was, I've left the band, thinking it would be some dramatic, story for these people, and that how deeply it would affect them. Oh, that's terrible. What are you going to do? The guy was like, "So why are you ringing me?" And I said, "I'm not quite sure why I'm ringing you." And he went, "Well, ring me when you are sure."
Wow.
So that's it. And like we were talking earlier on and joking about the music business, it's a business. So I'm like, I have to do something. I have to be, I have to create. I can't lose all this opportunity. I can't lose everything that I've gained.
Because you always find that it's very hard to build the traction, but once you stop, it's very quickly you lose the traction.
Oh, I mean, you become the
very thing you swore to destroy.
And also you become fish and chip wrapper.
Yeah.
Really quickly. People read the newspaper one day and then they're wrapping their chips in it the next day.
Yeah.
There's something else will come along. That void will be filled by someone else. So then you need to figure out, okay, I've left that. I mean, when I left the band, we were still playing to 5,000 people a night. Wasn't it? Some people might say I left a sinking ship, that the Silencers weren't as successful as they were when we were at our height, or when I first joined them.
There might have been a creative peak, but the Silencers were there, as you said, before you joined up, and they're already achieving that success.
They were still sustaining.
But you added to it, and it was something that you contributed, and as you said, it's been a great part of your life.
Yeah, and
now you're in the solo bracket. So tell us a bit about Sunnyside Pal and what the inspiration was for that album.
I mean, it was really just to prove that I could write my own songs, because I had written songs prior to being in the Silencers, and I tried to co-write songs with Jimmy, and for the first wee while Jimmy had more ideas than me, and I really was serving my apprenticeship under him, and he was more creative than I was. So I began to have less faith in myself and a lot more faith in in Jimmy. So that kind of, I thought, how am I going to work this? Okay, you've left. you've got a couple of ideas skirting around, and but I knew I had an album in me. I knew I had a record in me. I knew I had something to say. Just albeit that it might not have been as academically finely tuned as Jimmy as a lyricist always produced. But I thought, if I keep at it, I'll get better at it. If I keep doing this, if I keep writing, keep doing 100 lines every day, I'll get better at doing the 100 lines.
One thing I've always been really envious of people that like yourself, they can create such passionate music, is just how it happens. Like I told you in a conversation that I did do like parody stuff.
Yeah.
And it's because I'm just thinking of lyrics that fit into a tune and think, well, that'd be quite good if I can match that up. Then some people think that's that's a real skill. It's just me marrying things up. But to me, what is beautiful is how someone can take an idea about something, a concept, and make completely original content that actually touches people. And that's what you do, and you do it very well.
But I mean, there's a place for everything. I mean, with parody, and we spoke about this on the phone. With people like Weird Al Yankovic and stuff.
Yeah.
It didn't do them any harm to be parody, and lots of people are really good at parody, and even people that are extremely clever, like the Monty Python, they were really good at parody.
Oh, they were fantastic.
So I mean, that's a skill in itself. My idea was to try and write songs that could be hopefully as good as the Silencers, hopefully as good as other writers that I loved. I've achieved what I've achieved, but it was never easy, and I think that it's a great pleasure when I mean, the biggest break for me ever as a songwriter was when Kenny Rogers was sitting on one of my songs.
Wow.
And that to me was evidence that everything that I had, for every moment that I'd put into the music industry, all of a sudden I was staring down the barrel of Dreamcatcher Management in Nashville, and they were considering one of my songs for Kenny Rogers, and that completely blew my mind.
Can I ask which song?
It's a song called The Cowboy Lament.
Wow.
That I had originally written it for a country artist. I was being managed by Miles Copeland at the time, who managed the Police. His brother's in the Police. His brother was obviously the drummer, Stuart. So Miles was managing me at the time, and he had a Nashville artist that he was looking after, and he said to me, "Can you write a song about a cowboy that falls in love with a belly dancer?" And I said, "Yeah, okay." And he went, "Yeah, I bet you can, kid. I bet you can."
I love the impression. I love it.
And I said, "Yeah, I will. I'll do it for you." So I did it for him, and he rang me up and he said, "That's beautiful, man. That's beautiful." Now, remembering that this is the guy who put REM, the Bangles, the Go-Go's, the Police, as far back as Wishbone Ash, on the map.
Yeah.
As a manager, I mean, obviously he was harnessing their talent, but and here's this guy drawing breath and saying, when I see you when I see you acoustically and just on your own, you remind me of a young Springsteen. And I'm thinking, Jesus Christ.
Wow.
Now these are all great compliments. They don't pay the rent.
Yeah.
But they're great compliments. And I'm thinking, this is amazing. So I wrote the song. He fell out with his Nashville artist, and the song lay dormant. Kenny Rogers comes to Scotland, and the promoter of Regular Music, who are promoting his two gigs in the Usher Hall and the Armadillo in Glasgow, said, "JJ, would you open up for him? Just you though, and an acoustic guitar." And I said, "Sure, yeah, absolutely." And so I opened up for him, and his band members were at the side of the stage thinking, here's another opening act, let's see what they're like. Are they as good as last night's act? Or let's see what this kid's like, And,
yeah.
And I was a kid in comparison to Kenny's band. And when I came off stage, his keyboard player was there, Gene, and I'm friends with all of them now. And he said, "Wow, man, whose are the songs?" And I said, "Oh, they're mine." He said, "Oh man, good songwriting, can I get a copy of your album?" And I said, "Sure." And then when I came back, it was 2 nights in the Armadillo. I came back the second night, and he's Kenny's personal manager, stroke tour manager. But he was only the tour manager for Kenny. There was a separate tour manager for the band. So he was specified for Kenny's needs, and lovely man who's also called Gene, and a real Kentucky boy, lovely guy. He came up and he said, Kenny wants to meet you. And I said, oh wow, that's really nice, you know. But my mum was alive at the time, she was in the audience. He came out and said, man, how good was that kid, you know, how good was he and stuff. So he wants to meet me in the second night. I didn't realise that he'd said this on the stage. I didn't realise that Kenny Rogers came out, because I was in my dressing room by then. You know, I'd done my wee 30 minutes as the opening act.
Yeah.
Now it's the main act. Now it's Kenny. He's coming on. So my mum's in the audience, and he announces it. How good was that guy, young JJ Gilmour? How good is he and stuff? I don't know any of this. So we get the second night, and my mum doesn't even mention it when I'm driving her home. We get to the second night, and I arrive at the Armadillo for the second night, and the guy says, Kenny wants to meet you. You know, so I meet him. We discuss my songs. He asks, can he get a copy of my album, any of them? So I bring him all my albums, and then I said, I've got this song. And at that point, his personal road manager intervenes and said, JJ, don't do that. That's completely against the rules. You know, you're trying to solicit material to Kenny. That's just not happening. I'm really disappointed in you. And I said, good, listen, mea culpa. I understand. It was just, he asked me for some of my music. He said, no, he didn't. He asked you for your albums. He didn't ask you for a song that he might do. And that's what you're proposing for him. I don't like that. Don't do that again. We really like you. You know, this is the third gig that you've done with us, and collectively, as the Kenny Rogers gang, we all like you. But don't do that. Every city we go to in the world, somebody's got a song for Kenny. Everywhere we go, somebody's got, I've got the next hit for you, Kenny. And we don't like that. You know, Kenny likes to, and his manager like to choose the songs. But I'll tell you what I'll do, because we like you, I'll give it to Kenny's manager. Yeah. And I said, okay, that's brilliant. And they rang me. They just said, look, we love it. We love the song. We're going to sit on it with Kenny for his next album. But Kenny came and went then, didn't he? He died just a few months ago. But nothing will ever take that moment away from me. Nothing will ever take that time that Kenny Rogers, manager, and him, when I was asked then to explain the song to Kenny, because he came back to Scotland again, and they asked me to open for him again, this time in the Usher Hall, and I think the Royal Concert Hall. No, it was the Armadillo again, I think. I can't remember. And he asked me a wee bit about the song, and I said it's about a cowboy that falls in love with a belly dancer. And he says, it sounds like the kind of song I should be singing, JJ. And I said, yeah, I think so too, Kenny. And when you go back home, ask Jim to play it to you, you know, your manager, because he's holding it for you. Yeah. But circumstances, you know, things happen. Kenny goes away and does his other thing, or whatever happens, man, Drew, things happen in life. And then it got too late. He came back to Scotland about 3 years ago, and I went again to see him. This time it was in the Armadillo. No, it was in the Hydro.
There we
and I went along and saw him, and I spoke to the guys in the band and stuff, and he looked like an old man, he looked like a tired man. And I thought, he'll never do my song, you know. But that's alright, you know, I mean, that's fine, because they loved it. Yeah. And I got to meet one of the most successful country artists in the world, you know, that people like, you know, that Lionel Richie would write songs for him, not Glenn Fry, the drummer from the Eagles.
Yeah. The name escapes me now, but I know what you mean. Yeah.
He'd written songs for him, some of the biggest country stars in the world. And when I spoke to a guy from Nashville, he said to me, you do realise how incredible that is? I know people that camp outside in Nashville and stay in trailer homes for 20 years to try and get what you've got. And they came to you didn't go to them. And I said, well, that's not necessarily true. I did go to Kenny, but they came back to me and he went, honestly, I know guys that spend their whole life in Nashville trying to get into that guy's office, and you've walked into it. And I said, well, you know, as I say, it doesn't pay the rent, but it's a good story.
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, I was just so taken by that story. It's powerful. It's very powerful, especially when you were talking about what the manager saying that's you soliciting Kenny. I would have thought the exact same as you. not that you were soliciting, that it was just he was just saying, "Oh, have you got anything?" You're like, "Aye, sure." That's it. That's that. Just sometimes
you learn, don't you?
You learn as you go.
Every day's a school day.
Definitely. Oh God, I've heard that so many times.
Yeah.
Don't think I ever left school, in all honesty. So obviously with 2020, it's been a bit of a not so nice year with the pandemic and lockdown. Well, it's affected a lot of artists.
Yeah.
As it affects a lot of business. But how do you feel it's affected you? Have you seen like positives from it? Maybe you had more time to write newer stuff?
Well, I've had 2018 and 2019 were very difficult years for me with my mental health. I had some really heavy issues that I'd been dealing with or trying to deal with, and eventually I threw my hands up and sought help. I'd had help before with my mental health, but this time I wanted to really address some of the matters. So I spoke to my doctor and we worked out a plan, and I spoke to the musicians union. I've been in the union for years. I asked them to give me some assistance. A lot of artists have difficulty with their mental health, and I really set about repairing myself. So I repaired myself coincidentally with songs and with medication and some therapy. So out of that came a couple of really nice songs, and ironically one of the songs that came out on it is now sitting with a couple of artists now that I can't explain at the moment who they are, because they probably wouldn't want me to do that, but they're successful artists.
Well, if you need backing vocals, you know where I am.
Yeah. I mean, I won't be singing it, so I'd need to put you onto them. So that was fine. That came out of those 2 years leading up to 2020, and it was really only as the year turned, as 2019 and 2020 arrived, 2019 finished, that I started feeling a wee bit better. I started not being so reliant on my medication. I was speaking to my doctor, and I decided that the therapy that I'd been having, that I would just keep continuing with it, which I'm doing, that I wouldn't stop it anymore. I would just keep going to this woman who's fantastic. She's a 74-year-old woman, and we talked through my mental health issues, and so she knows. You can imagine. Yeah. It's nearly 3 years now. She knows my backstory. Yeah. Hook, line, and sinker.
And that's an unbelievably brave thing for you to do, like to hold the hands up and admit that you're going to go stay on the medication and go to this regular person that you can talk to and essentially unburden yourself. I know from my own experiences with mental health, hence why it's called the Mental Ginger Show, that Mental Ginger Show, that it's very tough to make that step. I had from my mental health for years and years, and when you finally say it, sometimes it can be a cross that you feel you have to bear. Sure. Because you don't know what's going to happen, how people are going to react, but then when you get I'm sure you've had a lot of support, and obviously if you never needed anything, I'm a trained mental first aider, so I'd be glad to be able to help as well. But when you get that support from anybody, it's just like someone takes that wee cross you have to bear and go, right, snap, you're not alone anymore. Yeah, and that's vital. It's vital, and that's why I think, I recently read a great interview back in 2012 actually with the wee guy McNamara from a band that I love called Embrace. Yeah. Embrace are really good. Oh, love them. And Danny suffered an awful lot with his mental health. I say Danny, I don't know the guy, I just, that's his name. Yeah. But he's been very open and honest with it. It all started through PTSD, and he's been really, really open about that, really open in his life about it. Ironically, it gets to the band's biggest hit, which was written by Chris Martin from Coldplay, who I like Coldplay, and I love him as a writer. I think they get unfairly treated. I actually mentioned that in when we do a top 10 album list, and we did have a wee bit of a dig at Coldplay, but I was like, I actually do like Coldplay. I'm not a massive fan. I'm what they call the casual fan, where I know like all the hits, maybe a couple of outside tracks, but I think he just seemed like a very genuine guy. And he's very honest. He's very honest about his mental health. And the songs are very good as well, and it's also very admirable that he can come out about his mental health. I mean, he's only recently, in the last less than the last year, Chris Martin's been extremely honest about
his desire to be in better mental health, also about constantly looking for that one fan. And I did this, so I know exactly what he's talking about. We weren't Coldplay, but we had a vast audiences at times, and I remember looking in the audience to find the one person that wasn't enjoying themselves. That in itself, you know, would give you an indication that there's something not working. You know, the mechanics are not all working in your head.
Yeah.
That there's 10,000 people in the middle of Paris watching you, you know, or 50,000 people in Spain in a bull ring watching you, and you're looking for the one person that isn't enjoying themselves.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ. When I heard Chris Martin saying that, who probably plays to, the numbers are immaterial who they play to,
Yeah.
but who is up there every night, you know, just people lauding, you know what I mean, it's just this man, and just wonder how brilliant is this guy, and how amazing he is, and there's this big fragile guy up there fronting what undoubtedly at this moment, without a shadow of a doubt, the most successful band in the world.
Yeah.
Pop band, and there he is coming back and saying that he has to go to Johnny, I think it's a drummer, Johnny on the guitars, can't remember, and the wee Scottish bass player and the other guy. Of course nobody really knows that. That's the great thing about not being a front man, because the bass player from Coldplay says, I can go anywhere in the world and nobody knows me.
Yeah.
But see if I stand next to Chris Martin, they go, oh, that's the bass player from Coldplay. But if you lose Chris Martin, nobody knows you. So you're carrying that burden around with you. He's carrying that frontman thing around with him, and I did too, and I still do. Joe and I talk about this with Caesar. So I think, you know, a long-winded answer to your question. In 2002 was as the new year turned for me. I was progressively getting more and more involved in helping other people with their mental health, if I could, only assisting them and pointing in directions of where I thought they could go. Yeah, please. Pointing in directions where I thought they could go. And also, you know, I think that those 2 years, my wilderness years, and coming back to songwriting again, and having a body of people that were a great support to me, and checking out everybody else, and of course a bit like Black Lives Matter at the moment, mental health really became the emperor's new clothes, didn't it? Everybody, you know, all of a sudden, like it wasn't cool to be gay in the 60s or the 70s, you know, but then in the 80s people just threw their hands up and went, look, I'm a poof, and just accept it, you know what I mean, I'm not hiding it anymore, and you know what, it isn't a crime anymore. And I think that's what happened in the mental health movement, you know, recently, and I think it's a great thing, because people hold their hands up now and go, listen, I'm not right, you know, my ship's out of keel here, you know what I mean, there's something happening here, it's not, this isn't working for me, you know, and other people, instead of going, whispering or tiptoeing around them as they used to, don't, it's your Uncle Frank, he's not very well, don't say anything. That's the way mental health used to be treated. Now it's, that's your Uncle Frank, you know, but he's getting help now, and your Uncle Frank's not very well, he's got mental health issues. Before it used to be, your Uncle Frank's, he's just not well at the the
There obviously still
isn't
is
good enough anymore.
There still is a lot of work to do around mental health as well. I mean, I know when it's the Be Kind, it came at the start of the year before the pandemic had kicked off, and then once the pandemic kicked off, Be Kind seemed to go out the way, and it was just right, the physical health's got to come first, but people don't realise that the mental health and the physical, it's one and the same. Like, you need to have both on an even keel to achieve some sort of life balance. And when it happened to me, I was running a support group in my work. Obviously can't say the name of my work in case I get sacked, but I was running it and it was going really well, and then the second that COVID kicked in, they just went, right, we have to stop this, and it's never went back up again, and that can be quite damaging, because it was something that was good not only for the staff but good for me as well.
And I hope it will come back again, Andrew, because it's important. They've saw how important that is. You know, definitely. Okay, COVID has put restrictions on lots of things, but I truly believe now that you know the mental health cat is firmly out the bag now, and it can't go back in. Jack can't go back in his box now because
Nope.
he's out, you know, or she's out. Jackette is out. You know, so it's there. It's that's it. You know, it's no longer, you know, covering up covering up the gay scene, covering up the mental health scene, covering up the Black Lives Matter. The cat's out the bag now. Listen, it's oil and water. It'll find its level. You know what I mean? But it'll take time. You're right. It'll take time.
Yeah.
But at least it's out the bag. It's no longer, your Uncle Jack, he's not well.
Yeah.
You know, tiptoeing around. Don't he's in there sleeping. Just let him sleep. You know. Now it's get him up, get him on a bike. You know, take him out for a walk. Take her out for a walk. Take them to the theatre. You know, don't hide them in a room. You know, I always remember years ago, you'll not know this, but it's a rumour, but I'm sure it's absolutely true, but the royal family used to hide the mental health within them. So the Queen Mother, the old Queen Mother, she had a sister that, you know, for all intents and purposes wasn't firing on all cylinders, so she'd get hid somewhere in some unit in Ireland somewhere, you know, but that's no longer the case anymore. You know, now it's you know, people can survive now, people can you know, people can now celebrate the fact that they're not very well.
Yeah, and it's no longer being that I'm suffering from mental health, it's more I have mental health issues or mental health problems, but I'm getting better.
Aye.
And I think that's what people seem to forget, that mental health can be, there's a positive and there's a negative.
Yeah.
And it's just finding the balance.
And the loony tag's gone now. You know, oh, he's a loony.
Yeah.
She's a loony. Oh, he was in the loony bin.
I know
when
that.
we were kids, well, that's he was in Gitlock, he was in a loony bin. You know,
it's the same when I take my medication. I still make jokes about it. Let's say, I forgot to take my crazy pill, and it's one of those ones that I don't do it to be insulting to myself or insulting for like anybody that suffers from mental health, because that's just not part of who I am or part of who anybody should be. It's just a default. It's somewhere where I just go, oh, forgot my pill. And you're like, what's that for? Oh, because I'm crazy. Way. Well,
I mean,
then they have a wee laugh, and that breaks the ice, and you go, no, I actually suffer from X, Y, and Z. This is what I have to take to make sure that I stay well.
Yeah, I mean,
so you were going through these kind of mental health issues, and then Sunnyside Pal was kind of off the back of that. Did you find it was good as a kind of a catharsis?
Well, I mean, the Sunnyside Pal, all my albums are you know, I suppose they're the storyboard of life, you know, of my life, and what I see is how I observe life or how it's affected me. And you wouldn't need to be a rocket scientist to read a lot of my lyrics, to read into them where things were going a wee bit better, where things weren't going so well, where things, you know, were maybe struggling. I mean, I get titles like I Might Give In, you know. You know, you don't need to be Albert Einstein to work out what the guy's saying, you know.
It's quite good, kind of like the Rod seal of music. It does exactly what it says in the tin.
Aye, and I think that, you know, it became more obvious to me that, you know, that certainly in the last couple of years, that things could, that I could be more open about it. I could instead of hiding it from my loyal following, if you like, whatever, you know. I could tell the people, I could say to them, I can't do this tonight, I can't be the show monkey tonight, I can't do a gig for you and then come and sit down in some bar with you or some hotel lounge, you know, where, you know, so that we can all congregate after the venue and we'll go to the hotel and we'll all sit in the lounge, the bar or whatever area, and I'll wax lyrical, and I can't do that, you know what I mean, because this is what's happening for me at the moment. I need to get sleep. I need to rest my mind. You know, I need to try and catch myself, you know, before I lose myself. You know,
and that's the best part, like being upfront and honest with not just yourself but with your fans. Because if they didn't have that from you, they might be like, oh, he didn't bother coming out and seeing us, and they would tell their fans, oh, he's an arsehole, he didn't come out and let's spend time with us. You're being upfront, and that's that's the key thing. Everybody says, oh, how do we do it? How do we do it? Just be honest.
Aye, I mean
That's the best policy.
But I spent my whole life being dishonest, so it was very hard to retrain my mind to be honest, you know. I spent my whole life covering up and concealing things, and you know, so I think being honest, particularly about how I was coping in the world, was great for me, you know, and you know, I mean, it'd be shocking for back in the day when people would say, you know, I just want to end myself. People used to think, oh, you know, you can't say that, but you can.
Yeah, and you have.
You know, yeah, you know. So I think it's been more, you know, it's been more. I've been much more open about it now, and all the people who work with me now in the industry. I mean, I've just in the last few days signed a publishing deal down in London.
Fantastic! Congratulations.
Thank you. And they're a great publishing company. I moved away from my previous publishers in Paris because it's a difficult thing. The music industry is difficult, so I felt that my time with Philippe in Paris had ran its course, and went on to these new guys in London, Wardlaw Music. They're fantastic, and the guy said to me, you know, I don't really know you that well, JJ. You know, in the period and you were writing that, were you doing what else were you doing in that period? And I said, I was trying to hold on, Stan. I said, you and I don't know one another, but one of the things that you should know about me is that I struggle with my mental health. So if we're going to go forward in business, I think it's really important right from the outset to tell you that. I was never able to do that before, whether that was me holding the situation back or whether it wasn't feasible to do it. Because you've got to be seen as the show monkey, you've got to be seen as the performer, the guy that's all right, you know, the guy that fronts the band and then he kills himself, and everybody's like, why did he kill himself? Yeah. You know. Yeah, for our generation, that one is probably the most significant. Is Chester Bennington from the band Linkin Park. Yeah.
Well, when we found out that was what happened, that was the first gig that I'd ever seen was Linkin Park, and we were all stunned. We couldn't believe it, and then you listen to the album One More Light that they just brought out. At that point, it was their quote-unquote mainstream album, but you listen to some of the songs on it and the hints were there that something wasn't okay. Yeah. And you listen to it and it breaks your heart. And that's...
And the poor bugger was maybe not able to speak about it.
Yeah, and it's one thing that's really, really sad about the industry is that you feel like you have to put that cover over, well, especially like back when you had
not to, now you don't, Andrew.
Yeah, you're
as
not.
I say, Jack's out the box now.
Yeah, you're not as bad now, definitely. After that, even though we've kind of took a divert tangent to talk about mental health, I've really enjoyed talking about mental health with you.
Yeah, me
especially
too.
someone that's in the performing side of it, because that's what you always felt like. You had to put that show monkey, as you said.
Yeah.
You used that phrase a few times. I think that's a brilliant phrase to use.
Yeah.
Because that's what it feels like. You're just dance monkey.
The show must go on. Yeah. No, it doesn't actually. It doesn't must go on.
Or Freddie Mercury, show must go on.
There you go.
And you're like, inside the heart's breaking, but you've got to carry on.
And there was someone else. I watched that movie. I thought it was brilliant, actually.
Yeah, it was absolutely fantastic.
And there was another tortured soul, and you know, battled with sexuality, all the things that he couldn't talk about. You know. But now, you know, you get this young guy fronting the band now with Brian May, and he's as gay as get out, and nobody cares. Nobody cares. He can talk about it openly. Whereas Freddie Mercury spent his whole career, like George Michael, covering it up. So it's a bit, you know, mental health like that. I see it running along the same lines as all of those things. Yeah. You know, obviously we're deep into the Black Lives Matter thing now, but I see the mental health running along beside those things, because you don't need to cover it up anymore. Yeah. You know, great artists, great actors now, and people now saying, I never told you. I mean, the classic example of that whole thing for me was the death of Robin Williams. Yes. You know.
Absolutely heartbreaking.
You know, and Robin Williams never was actively able to speak about his mental health issues. Everybody knew. You could tell, I mean, the guy was a machine. Yeah. To be on stage, he was like a whirling dervish. You know, you couldn't have held him down with a nail gun.
No.
You know.
Definitely not.
And there he was, entertaining all these people, but yet his immediate family and everybody knew that he was suffering so badly.
Yeah. What's the expression? Laugh to hide the tears.
Yeah, and I think that, I do my own little podcast, Jinky's Chinwag, and I interviewed Gavin Mitchell, who we'll all know as Bobby the Barber.
Yeah.
And Gavin knew Robin Williams.
I met him once and he blew right past me. It was quite funny.
He's a lovely guy.
Yeah.
Who also went to school in Coatbridge.
Oh, did he?
He went to St Pat's.
Oh.
Yeah, he was brought up in Glenboy.
Oh, brilliant. Drop my name if you get to speak to him.
Yeah, Gavin's a lovely man.
Yeah.
He knew Robin Williams.
Did he?
Yeah, he was in a film with him.
Wow.
And it had been in his house. And
Did he say what film?
Sorry?
Did he say what film?
You'd be able to find it out easily on the internet. I'm not sure. I'm not a film buff. But Gavin's an extremely interesting guy, and he was a brilliant guest on my Chinwag. But it was just, that to me, it's just a casualty of life that people couldn't say to someone, do you know what? I'm struggling. Things aren't working out for me. I've had all these thoughts that I'm really worried about. I'm concerned for my well-being here. Yeah. People couldn't throw their arms up. Now you can throw your arms up. Now people go, do you know what? Good on you. Let's go and see the GP. The National Health might be in a state that scumbag Tory mob have got it in. Yeah. But there is help out there. There are, the National Health Service, in my opinion, should be a lot more helpful for mental health, but it should be a lot more helpful for a lot of categories, not just mental health. But the good thing about
it's a bit broken just now, but it's still better than a lot that's out there.
We need to get the Tories out, and then we can start to reinvest in people, not in product.
Yeah, definitely. We've spent a lot of time talking about the past. So let's talk about the future for JJ Gilmour. Right? So tell me about Caesar, and tell us all what this project is about, and we'll try and end this show on the high.
Absolutely. It should always be on a high if we can. But I think that Caesar came out of when the original guitarist Cha, who was from just down the road from where we are at the moment, from Dunbeth. Cha was the guitarist in the Silencers. Cha had a fantastic career. He was the musical director and a member of Adam and the Ants.
Yeah.
He was also in the Fingerprints, which were the band that were pre the Silencers. And Cha rang me and declared to me that he wasn't very well. He contracted cancer. Things weren't looking great for him, and I said, look, once I had spoken to him on the phone, I thought, you talked earlier on about putting the band back together. I thought, this is the only reason for me anyway we could put the band back together. We'll do a last gig for Cha, and we did. And then Cha died, which was expected. And Joe rang me afterwards and said, I really enjoyed spending time with you, because although Joe and I were in the same band, we were never in it at the same time. Yeah. Joe left the band, and then I joined them.
Oh, right.
So he said, I really enjoyed working with you during this process of, we did a final gig for Cha in the ABC in Glasgow. It was amazing, sold out in 2 minutes. And
saying that he played in the ABC in Glasgow, considering what's happened with, obviously, from the result of the Glasgow School of Art. That's another little bit to add.
Absolutely, a great venue. So Joe had rang me up and they said, look, Joe lives in Windsor in London, and they said, look, could you lives beside the Queen, as I always say. And he does well, he's a lovely man, he's got a grown up family, and he said, listen, I want another crack at this. So he asked me, we started working on some songs, and then we're signed to a small label in London called Verter, and they contacted Joe. He was a neighbour of Joe's down in London. He contacted Joe and said, look, I've got a friend in Abbey Road who mixed the Silencers, the Scottish Rain, and he loved the band, and I've just realised that just through chatting, and I know you through my wife and your wife. You were in the Silencers, and he said, yeah, I was a bass player. I said, listen, would you do a kind of remix of a re-recording of Scottish Rain and come into Abbey Road and we'll mix it and I'll do it? And Joe said, no, like me, he said, nah, I've already done the Silencers thing. That period is done and dusted now. We had a second visit with it, during Chaz's illness, and then they did a couple of gigs afterwards. Anyway, he said, but I've been across to Ireland, across to where Jinky lives in Ireland, in a house in Donegal, and we've been working on a few ideas, and I'd much rather do one of them. So we let them hear the ideas. The guy in Abbey Road is a guy called Miles Shaw. He's like the half-speed master, best in the world. He just did Sgt. Pepper.
All right.
Him and Giles Martin,
Yeah.
George Martin's son, just did remastered and remixed it all on the Beatles' request, or who's left of the Beatles. And so they said, look, we love it. We love the songs and stuff, you know. And then Tourage, who's the record company, said, look, would you try and put an album together, and we'll finance it and put it out. So we did that. We mastered it in Abbey Road, which was incredible. They loved it, and we've put the album out. We did a few gigs, and now we think COVID happened, slowed things down a bit, and now we're going to do a second album. Joe comes up next week. We're going to start writing a second album, and we've got for the future, looks as it will be for Caesar, as much as we put into it. We're doing a great show in Blenheim Palace, and with Simple Minds.
Oh, fantastic!
Deacon Blue. So the
Wow.
three of us are playing. It should have been last month, but because of COVID, it's cancelled. So Jim likes us. Jim and Joe are very close, and a few people out there like us. We did some shows with we did a show with the Pretenders again in Kelvin Grove.
Kind of coming full circle then.
It is, ironically. So Joe and I have just signed this publishing deal this week. We're going in to record a new album. We've got a song called The Last Train Home, which we're about to do with a Hungarian orchestra, which is going to be incredible. It's one of the big Philharmonic orchestras. I think it's the National Orchestra. So we're negotiating that. I'm writing new songs for myself. I've got this song that I wrote last year called Dear Myself, that I wrote just as I was coming out of my really tough mental health period. And a couple of bands are looking at it. One band significantly are looking at it, and a really great writer that I admire, a hugely successful guy. It's the first song that him and I have talked about working. This guy's in about 60 top 10 hits, and it's the first song out of my songs that I write that he's ran me back and went, this is it, this is the idea. Remember I said that you and I were going to work together? That someday you and I were going to work together. This is the song. So that happened. That was during COVID. He lives in Jersey, where I used to live.
Yeah.
That's how I got to know him. So I'm going to fly back now that things are getting a bit better. I'll fly back to Jersey, and him and I work on that song. We'll see what happens with it. It'll be fine. I think I'm almost there on my own new album, which I'll wait until we bring out the Caesar's new album, because that's the one that Joe and I want to get finished. So I think next year we'll hopefully have the Caesar album out, and then I think 2021 I'll bring out a new, awaited for me anyway, my new album.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'll keep going, Andrew. That's what I do.
Well, if you ever want to come back on the show or do any promotions, or if you need a backing singer, nudge nudge, wink wink, then you know a mental ginger that's up for it.
Yeah.
And one final question that I'll ask you: for anybody that's looking to start cutting their teeth in the music industry, what would you say would be your best piece of advice to give them?
Without a shadow of a doubt, don't go on X Factor. Don't go on The Voice. Don't go on any of those shows.
110% agree with that one. That is absolutely brilliant. Do you have any questions that you'd like to ask me?
No, I just want to wish you the best, and I want to wish you the best in your mental health, and I'm very envious. You've got two lovely children, and I just enjoy life, and make sure that you do, and treasure those moments. Those are, so that, I mean, we don't know one another, but we've got a spiritual connection, so just look after yourself and be well, and
We may not know one another, but I'm looking forward to getting to know you as the years go on.
and be gentle on yourself. That's the most important thing.
Yeah.
The hardest person to forgive is yourself.
Yeah. JJ, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so
Pleasure.
much for having
Thank
coming
you,
on
Andrew.
today. So until next time, this is Andy Durning
And JJ Gilmore
saying take care, stay safe, bye bye.
and toodaloo the new.